When I think about great platformers that I've played, not many recent games come to mind. Most of my platforming gaming was when I was a kid. All the old Super Mario Brothers up to Super Mario 64. I played a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Sonic & Knuckles. But once games entered the world of 3D graphics, my interest shifted to Resident Evil, Twisted Metal, Metal Gear Solid, the games that went on to define a lot of my tastes. Some games in those years involved some platforming, like the classic God of War games, Ninja Gaiden, but you wouldn't classify those games as platformers. And while I liked Uncharted back when it came out, the platforming in that game is automatic and mindless. I just haven't had a great pure platforming experience in a long time. Of the recent platforming games that I know, I think of Ghost Runner, which is great, but I wasn't all that crazy about it. I played Super Meat Boy, which is amazing, I liked it, but I don't know why it didn't grab me, I just didn't stick with it. I love Spelunky, is that a platformer? I don't know. Celeste is a game that I've been curious about ever since it came out. As soon as I saw it, I thought, I've gotta check that one out. But I didn't. It fell to the side like so many other titles do. Because before I got into making content for this channel, I didn't play that many games. But here I am, trying to catch up on so many titles I missed, and it's time to talk about this colorful, fast, high-skill, speedrunner-friendly, wonderful game. Celeste is the best platformer ever made. Is that a controversial statement? I don't believe it is. Rarely do I open a game for the first time and play all the way through it in one sitting. It took me about 8 hours, and there's still more to do. There's a bonus level and a bunch of extra sections of the levels that I already beat. I'm not done. I don't have a lot to say about this one, guys. I make these videos to tell you what I think about games, and sometimes it's really simple. Celeste is great. Level after level, you're presented with new and interesting platforming puzzles utilizing the simple mechanics of jump, climb, and dash. Climbing uses your stamina, which is one of the things I struggled with the most. I was always forgetting that I couldn't just hold onto a wall to think for a minute, or I'd plan my route in a way that would leave me without enough stamina to complete the climb at the end of the room. I just kept kicking myself for being dumb. It's a great mechanic though, it adds pressure to the platforming without implementing a timer. All the environments are gorgeous. Sometimes pixel art comes across as lazy to me, but man, this game looks great. Except in some levels, I find it hard to notice the spikes because of how much brightness there is on screen. Here, where all the hazards are red against dark colors, I'm always aware of them. But here, when we're dealing with pinks and blues and yellows, sometimes I'm moving around and I jump straight onto a bed of spikes because my eyes skip right over it. Maybe that's just me, I'd be curious if anyone else had this experience. Every level is complemented by a beautiful soundtrack, one that I'd happily listen to casually when I'm not playing. Something that for me is really only reserved for the Silent Hill soundtracks. And I'm wondering if anyone else noticed a similar melody to the Rocky theme. I've been watching the Rocky movies lately, and I noticed it. Anytime this melody plays, I continue it by singing the Rocky theme. I did it for hours. I have very few complaints about this game. It's close to perfect in my eyes. For such a simple game, Celeste is surprisingly complex, and it introduces its complexity with perfect pacing. Just when you start thinking you've mastered the mechanics, the next level presents something new that makes you think differently about how you're going to navigate the room. The first example of this is in the second world, when you come across these suspension bubbles that you can dash through. They transport you across and launch you out the other side with a dash recharge. That's important because before this, you were only recharging dashes by touching a surface. When you pass through these bubbles, you can't change direction, so you have to set up the entry point in a way that leads you out exactly where you want to be going. Rooms with multiple bubbles can lead to really interesting puzzle sections. Figuring out the platforming puzzles is the only way to progress, and there's optional strawberries to pick up that require more thought. You don't have to get them, but it's really fun. I'm reminded of Braid, where you can ignore the puzzle pieces if you want to, but trying to get the puzzle pieces is the whole idea of the game, and it's where most of the fun is found. In Celeste, you're really gonna want to try to get the strawberries because they're really fun to get, and trying to get them will only make you better at the game. I have a small criticism about the strawberries though. Okay, so these things are spread throughout the map, and the maps are, I guess they're linear, but it's easy to end up not going to every part of the map. So it's unlikely you'll find all strawberries on your first playthrough, and that's fine, it lends to replayability. When you go back to a level, it shows you how many strawberries you missed, and in what order they appear in each part of the level. So if you want to find the ones you missed, you gotta go back through the level and look for parts of the map you overlooked or just chose not to go to. The problem I have with this is that there are points of the map that block you from returning to previous areas. So if I missed a strawberry on this repeat attempt at exploration, I gotta start all over again. So I wish there was an option to enable a compass that directs you towards any strawberry you missed on repeat playthroughs. I say this because I don't think the act of running around trying to find the last 4 strawberries in a map is where the fun of this game lies. The fun is in figuring out how to solve the navigation puzzle to get the strawberries. And after playing through some of these levels a few times and still not finding a few of them, I don't want to repeat the levels anymore, and I'm left here feeling like I've missed out on some of the fun of this game because of it. I do, however, like the hidden cassette tapes that unlock B-side and C-side levels. These are much more difficult sections of each level with a much higher emphasis on tight, precise platforming. They are very punishing. I can't do it. I tried. I think they're awesome, and I'm really glad they're here for people who want to push themselves that far at mastering the game. I wish more games had something like this for people who get really good at a game's mechanics. It's just too much for me though. I got through a few stages and decided I wasn't really enjoying it. I'll just stick to casually playing through the campaign. I've seen some speedruns of these extra levels, and the things I see are truly impressive. Celeste also has a story. I think it's okay. I'm not going to be too hard on the story. I know that people love it and relate to it, and it's just a cute story to put in a game that really doesn't need a story anyway, so it's alright. But I will say that I think it's a bit too on the nose. It's a story about fighting and coming to terms with that part of you that drags you down. That part of you that says you're not good enough. It's about dealing with your own insecurities. It's nice, it's a good message. It's just so spelled out. I wish the story had been more metaphorical, symbolic, with a lot less obvious dialogue. Because some points of this story just go on too much about this stuff to the point where it feels overdone. You could have the same positive message and charming characters without waving a giant sign in front of the player saying, "Hey, this is about dealing with your insecurities in case you didn't notice." I will say though that despite finding the themes of the story too obvious and the dialogue too long and meandering, the characters are very endearing. I smiled every time I came across someone again, especially Mr. Oshiro. Seeing the characters together in photos made me smile, and they're probably some of the most memorable characters I've seen in one of these modern old school style games. I'm gonna spoil the boss fight now. If you don't want to see that, then you can stop the video here. I recommend this game, of course I recommend it, it's fantastic. Now, the boss. It's one of the best boss fights I've ever seen. You fight against your dark inner self as she's shooting projectiles at you, and you have to navigate spaces to get close to her. Touching her counts as an attack. And speaking of symbolism, that's pretty nice. You go through so many rooms as the game tests your mastery of all the skills you've learned. Warning! Doom Eternal reference incoming! You know in Doom Eternal how the boss fights incorporate the skills you've learned into their design? You're dealing with multiple enemy types, you're targeting enemy weak points, you're using your mobility options and your armor recharge, measuring dashes, engaging in platforming, managing resources. It all comes together. I get that feeling from the boss fights in Celeste too. The fight is very long, many stages to get through. It's fast, it's fun, it's frustrating, and it's satisfying. When it was over, even though I died like 100 times, I had a big smile on my face. One of the best boss fights ever. If you haven't played Celeste, I recommend you pick it up. You won't be disappointed. Its mechanics, art design, music, and so much more make it one of the most enjoyable games I've played this year. And even if platformers aren't your thing, I think it would be good to play it for a bit just to see what it's all about and how well made it is. Thanks for watching.